There are moments in life when something awakens within us, a silent yet powerful calling that invites us back to our deepest essence. When feminine energy truly awakens, it is not just about softness or beauty. It is an invisible magnetic field that attracts experiences, encounters, and connections that resonate with the soul. It is in this state of presence and wholeness that true love reveals itself, not as a romantic ideal, but as a mirror of our inner integration. The journey toward accessing this force is not linear, nor is it easy, but it is profoundly transformative. And when you walk this path, something shifts. The world feels it. Because when you align with your inner truth, love has no choice. It recognizes, approaches, and stays. Leave in the comments, "I am ready to awaken my true energy." Carl Jung's analytical psychology offers a powerful lens through which we can understand the awakening of feminine energy as a process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. At its core, feminine energy represents the receptive, intuitive, sensitive, and creative aspects of the psyche. It is not bound by gender, but manifests uniquely in each individual, demanding recognition, integration, and conscious expression. Jung proposed that we all carry within us an unconscious counterpart. In men, the feminine aspect known as the anima. In women, the masculine, called the animus. When a woman reconnects with her authentic feminine energy, she begins to integrate her own anima, not as weakness but as soul power. This integration allows her to stop projecting her emotional needs onto partners and instead attract relationships that reflect her inner wholeness. The shadow, another central concept in Jung's work, represents the repressed contents of the personality, everything the conscious mind rejects. In many women, feminine energy remains in the shadow due to social conditioning that equates it with weakness or submission. When this energy is welcomed and reclaimed, it transforms into natural magnetism. This is not about manipulation, but about aligning with an archetypal force that communicates truth, beauty, and quiet power. In this awakened state, true love does not need to be sought. It is attracted through resonance. The woman becomes a mirror of her own essence, and the other, upon recognizing her, is invited to awaken as well. Love ceases to be a need and becomes a consequence. The journey of individuation, as defined by Carl Jung, is the process through which an individual becomes who they truly are, moving beyond social masks, inherited beliefs, and unconscious projections. For the woman who wishes to access and awaken her deepest feminine energy, this path is inevitable. It is a passage that does not begin outwardly, but in inner silence, where the lost essence begins to speak through intuitions, restlessness, and desires that once seemed inappropriate or confusing. Throughout much of history, society has shaped women according to rigid patterns of behavior, often tied to emotional servitude, the silencing of their own desires, and the denial of their intuitive strength. In doing so, women became estranged from their own souls. The awakening of feminine energy begins precisely when she realizes that living by these rules fragments her, that something deeper and truer is asking to emerge, an inner calling that can no longer be ignored. This energy, in the Jungian context, represents more than a set of aesthetic or behavioral qualities. It is a powerful archetype linked to life, creation, receptivity, and connection with the unconscious. Jung saw the unconscious as feminine in nature, for it is fertile, mysterious, and generative. By rediscovering her essence, the woman stops trying to fit in and begins to reveal herself. And it is in this moment that individuation truly begins, when she stops seeking external approval and starts looking within. This inner movement requires courage. It means confronting old conditioning, facing the pain of being disconnected from herself, and questioning beliefs that once seemed unquestionable. The woman who walks toward individuation realizes that her feminine energy is not something to be conquered, but something to be released. It has always been there, asleep beneath layers of expectations. This rediscovery often comes with crises, because everything that no longer resonates with her truth must collapse. The feminine soul can no longer tolerate living half alive. In the individuation process, a woman begins to listen to her inner rhythms, respect her timing, her sensitivity, and her intuitive perception. She begins to understand that her strength does not lie in becoming more masculine to survive, but in surrendering with presence to what she essentially is. This surrender is not submission, it is integration. True feminine energy does not compete with the masculine, but dances with it. And this dance is only possible when the woman is anchored in herself, whole and awake. Individuation also involves integrating the multiplicity that lives within. The woman discovers that she can be gentle and firm, receptive and discerning, nurturing and wild. She stops dividing herself to please and begins to accept herself as a whole. This generates a transformation in the field around her. True love, as the manifestation of an authentic connection, cannot arise where fragmentation exists. But when a woman finds herself, love arrives not as salvation but as recognition. This rediscovery of feminine essence is not an end but a return to what has always been within her but was silenced. The woman awakens to herself as one returning from a long journey, with longing, with wonder, with reverence. And when she looks at herself with truth, she also attracts gazes that see not the image, but the soul. Love then does not resist, because it recognizes something rare: wholeness. The shadow, according to Carl Jung, is the set of aspects of the personality repressed or denied by consciousness. It is not necessarily negative, but rather everything the ego considers unacceptable, shameful, or undesirable. In the case of a woman and her feminine energy, the shadow often contains fundamental parts of her nature that have been silenced throughout her life. Her deep sensitivity, her intuition, her legitimate anger, her desire for freedom, her creative power, and above all, her vulnerability. From a very early age, many women learn that expressing certain feelings or behaviors can be dangerous. Being too sensitive is seen as weakness. Being too intuitive is dismissed as irrational. Being too intense is labeled as lack of control. And so she shapes herself into an acceptable image, functional to others, but foreign to herself. The more she tries to fit in, the more her shadow grows, fed by all the parts of her soul that she has disowned. The repression of feminine energy creates an inner abyss. The woman feels something is missing, but she cannot name it. She looks to the outside world for what she has hidden within. Often she tries to fill this void through relationships where she hopes to be validated, cared for, or understood, without realizing that the true rescue must happen inside. The shadow then begins to manifest in distorted ways: compulsive behaviors, jealousy, emotional sabotage, difficulty surrendering, fear of being fully seen. But there is a hidden secret within the shadow. It holds immense power. Instead of being something to fear or deny, it can be understood as a key to liberation. When a woman has the courage to face these repressed aspects with honesty and without judgment, she begins to integrate, and it is in this process that true transformation takes place. Pain gives way to clarity, fear turns into courage, need dissolves into emotional self-sufficiency. Among all aspects of the feminine shadow, vulnerability is one of the most misunderstood. For too long, it has been confused with fragility. Yet to be vulnerable is not to be weak. It is to be open, present, available to feel. It is to have the courage to expose oneself, to love, to speak of what hurts, to no longer hide what is real. This vulnerability is what connects, what allows intimacy, what creates true bonds. And paradoxically, it is also what attracts the deepest love. When a woman integrates her shadow, she stops fighting against herself. She no longer needs to constantly defend. She abandons the effort to control everything to protect herself from rejection. In doing so, she begins to radiate a magnetic energy that cannot be fabricated or imitated. This energy is born from the meeting of light and shadow, from the radical acceptance of everything she is. And when this acceptance happens, love ceases to be a desperate need and becomes a celebration of encounter. The other, upon coming into contact with such a woman, notices something different. Within her there is peace, presence, rare authenticity. She does not need to prove anything, nor adapt to be loved. She simply is, and that is enough. That attracts, that inspires. Because deep down, we all seek that safe space of emotional truth, where we can be ourselves without masks. And the woman who integrates her shadow offers exactly that, a field where love can bloom without fear. The repression of feminine energy, therefore, does not cancel its power. It only hides it. But when this energy is reclaimed, welcomed, and lived in its wholeness, it transforms into pure magnetism, And this has nothing to do with appearance or performance. It has to do with the soul. The shadow is not an obstacle to love, it is the portal. And crossing it requires courage but also offers an invaluable reward, the freedom to love without losing yourself and to be loved without hiding. At the heart of Jungian psychology, the concepts of anima and animus represent the archetypal forces of the feminine and masculine present in every human being. For a woman, the animus is the unconscious representation of her inner masculine. It is formed through experiences with male figures, father, brothers, partners, teachers, and becomes a psychic structure that directly influences how she relates to men, to her inner authority, and to her own capacity to act in the world. When the animus is unconscious or distorted, a woman tends to project it onto external figures. This means she sees in others, especially romantic partners, qualities, strengths, or shadows that actually belong to her own psyche. This happens when she idealizes a man, expecting him to complete her, to bring security, direction, protection, or purpose. In this dynamic, love turns into dependency, and the relationship becomes a field of mutual projections where neither truly sees the other as they are. The integration of the animus is an essential step toward transforming these projections into conscious love. This process begins when a woman recognizes that what she seeks in another is often a reflection of what she needs to develop within herself. The strong, protective, present man she longs for may point to the need to cultivate inner strength, self-confidence, emotional resilience that does not depend on the external. By becoming aware of this, she begins to withdraw these projected images and empower herself with her own inner structure. Yet the animus does not manifest only as romantic idealizations. It can also appear as an inner critical voice that judges, demands, and insists on performance and perfection. This negative side of the animus is the result of internalizing rigid patriarchal standards absorbed culturally. When unrecognized, this destructive animus undermines a woman's self-esteem, blocks her creativity, and keeps her in a constant state of comparison and self-sabotage. Integrating it, therefore, also means confronting these voices and reshaping them. However, the animus has a positive and creative aspect. When consciously integrated, it becomes a bridge between a woman and her deepest inner world. It helps her manifest her vision, act with courage, structure her projects, set boundaries, and protect her vulnerability without shutting it down. This healthy animus stops being an oppressor and becomes an ally. It gives a woman the capacity to love without losing herself, to surrender without disappearing, to receive without submitting. The integration of the animus transforms relationships. A woman no longer seeks a savior or a hero, but chooses partners with whom she can build a horizontal relationship based on presence, authenticity, and mutual growth. She no longer expects the other to define her, because she has already found her own definition. This subtle yet profound shift completely changes the energetic field of the relationship. Conscious love is born when two whole people meet, not to complete one another, but to share what already overflows. In this new paradigm, love is no longer a quest for someone to compensate for wounds, but a celebration of one's own healing. The man ceases to be a mirror of lack and becomes the reflection of abundance. And the woman, by integrating her animus, becomes magnetic not by following rules of seduction, but by living in alignment with her truth. Her presence inspires confidence, not because she controls, but because she knows herself. And those who know themselves attract relationships that honor that integrity. The awareness of the animus is one of the greatest inner revolutions a woman can experience. She learns to discern what is projection and what is real. She learns to choose not out of need but from clarity. And above all, she learns that true love does not need to be found outside. It begins with the union of the inner forces of the feminine and the masculine. This union not only transforms the woman, but also the kind of love she comes to live. There is a kind of presence that cannot be rehearsed, a silent vibration that fills a space effortlessly, without words, without demanding attention. This is the presence of a woman who has awakened her feminine energy in depth. She does not need to call, to convince, to seduce. Her very existence attracts. This magnetic force does not come from a constructed image, but from a state of being that emerges when a woman is fully connected to herself, whole, conscious, true. Awakened feminine energy is, above all, an expression of presence. Presence in the body, in the breath, in feeling, in the present moment. It is a state of active receptivity, an inner space that welcomes yet knows how to set boundaries. This woman does not abandon herself to please, nor does she close off to protect herself. She remains in herself, and it is precisely this emotional stability that generates the magnetic field that attracts true love. She does not need anyone, but chooses with whom to share her abundance. Jung understood feminine energy as something deeply connected to the unconscious, intuition and ancestral wisdom. When this force is repressed, a woman disconnects from her instinct, loses access to her inner compass, and begins to act based on external expectations. But when it awakens, everything changes. She begins to hear her intuition clearly, to trust her cycles, to respect her limits, to say yes with openness and no with firmness. And this coherence between what she feels, thinks, and does makes her naturally attractive. It is important to understand that this magnetic presence is not about physical appearance or any aesthetic standard. It comes from the soul. It comes from emotional depth, authenticity, spiritual maturity. A woman who has awakened her feminine energy is not seeking validation. She is in communion with her essence. And this communion creates an atmosphere around her that stirs in others the desire to approach, to know, to stay. True love, in this context, is not a reward for good behavior, nor a goal to be achieved. It is the natural consequence of inner resonance. The other feels drawn not only to the woman seen outwardly, but to what she represents at an archetypal level. She becomes a mirror of the sacred feminine, not in a religious sense, but as a vital force that heals, nurtures, transforms, and inspires. Her presence awakens what is highest in those who encounter her, and that is why love does not resist. It recognizes. This woman does not make herself smaller to be accepted. She does not negotiate her essence. She knows what she offers and knows what she deserves. And for that very reason, she will not settle for less than a real connection. Her presence becomes a natural filter. It repels what is superficial and attracts what is true. This is not arrogance, but inner sovereignty. It is the fruit of deep self-knowledge, of shadow integration, of reconnection with her own soul. By awakening her feminine energy, a woman also awakens her creativity, her power of manifestation, her ability to generate not only children, but ideas, projects, experiences. This generative force is reflected in everything she touches. Love in this scenario ceases to be an end and becomes an extension of her state of fullness. She does not love to be completed. She loves to expand, and in offering this kind of love, she attracts it back, vibrating at the same frequency. What magnetizes is not what she does, but what she is. The awakened woman carries within her a serenity that cannot be taught, a depth that cannot be faked. She lives in coherence with her soul, and this reflects in her gaze, her touch, her silent presence. She does not seek love as an escape, but as a reflection. And so when love arrives, it finds in her a home, a safe, alive, true space, and it stays. Awakening feminine energy is much more than accessing a new way of being in the world. It is remembering who you have always been. It is a return to essence, to the sacred that inhabits your body, your soul, your intuition. Along this journey, we have seen that this awakening is not instant, but a profound process of individuation, of shadow integration, of reconnecting with the inner animus, and of manifesting a magnetic presence that transforms everything around. True love does not resist inner truth. It is drawn to it. When you become whole, you stop searching and begin to live relationships that mirror your depth. Because what you integrate within yourself will inevitably be reflected in the other. The real revolution is internal, and it is there that love flourishes, free of need, full of awareness. If this message touched something within you, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any content that deepens your journey. And now go further. Click on the video on the screen and continue your transformation, because the path back to yourself is the most powerful invitation to love that exists.